Okay, everyone, so let's get started here with exactly the best ways to learn to read sectional charts. Okay, let's be honest, sectional charts are daunting. They're scary and confusing, and old people in McDonald's ask you if it's a Wi-Fi hotspot thingy for a building. I don't know, it happened to me once. Either way, they're confusing, and they just look up like a bunch of confusing lines and circles placed onto a piece of paper. Okay, and the reason why it's like this is because we're trying to take a three-dimensional world and flatten it into a two-dimensional world and put that on a piece of paper. Okay, obviously not a very easy thing to do, and it looks very confusing, to the untrained eye. Okay. So that's why we're here. We're here to basically teach you how to learn how to read this. Okay. So let's start off by actually just taking a look over here really fast. Okay. Obviously, you have your legend. Okay, and all of what we're going to be talking about today, you can find all that information right here in Airport Traffic Service and Airspace Information. Okay, it's found on the side of every single chart, and it makes it very, very easy. Okay, so that being said, before we officially really get started and get into all the nitty-gritty here, there are a few things that I think would be wise that you get together before we actually start the lesson. Okay, first off, you're probably going to want to get a sectional out. If you don't have a sectional, that's absolutely fine. Sky Vectors, that's actually the program I'm using now, www.skyvector.com. Completely free, lets you view any sectional chart across the entire world. But really it would be best if you actually had a hard copy sectional chart out in front of you. Okay. Secondly, get yourself a nice notepad. Give you some notes to jot down, really help you kind of remember the information a lot better. And finally, have a finger or a limb or a phalange of some sort ready to click the pause button at any time. Some of this stuff might be a little bit confusing. Some of the stuff you might want to rehear. Some of the stuff you might just want to hold it so you can take down a note. So either way, have something ready. Be sure that you're ready to click the pause button or rewind so you can go into that. So that being said, let's get started. First of all, there's a number of different airspaces that we're going to be going over today. Okay, the main ones we're going to be getting into are the controlled versus the uncontrolled airspace. Okay, now really there's 4 different types of controlled airspace, and then there's one kind of uncontrolled airspace. Okay, the types of controlled airspace are A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, and actually, I'm sorry, there's 5 different types of controlled airspaces. But then the one uncontrolled type of airspace is Class G airspace. Okay. So that being said, of those controlled airspaces, you're going to find three of them that lie specifically around airports. Okay, around towered airports. Okay, you're going to find the first kind of towered airport, which is the Class D airspace, which surrounds it, which is notified by this blue dotted line. There's the Class C controlled airport, which is surrounded by the Class C airspace, which is depicted by this purple line. And then finally, the Class B airport with the Class B surrounding it, which is depicted by this solid blue line. Okay. So those are the 3 main kinds of airspaces that surround airports. And then you have E and G, which just kind of fill in all the rest of the stuff. And then finally, you have A airspace. So that said, let's get started with Class A airspace. Okay, Class A airspace is really very simple. It's very straightforward. Pretty much everything above 18,000 feet all the way up to 60,000 feet, it's all Class A airspace. Okay, it's It's very straightforward. It's just that big corridor in the sky, starting at 18,000 feet above mean sea level, all the way up to 60,000 feet above mean sea level. That's all Class A. The only thing you really need to get in there is an IFR flight plan. So if you've got a plane that can fly up there and you're instrument rated and you file an IFR flight plan, you can go in the Class A airspace. It's pretty basic, pretty straightforward. That's really all there is to Class A airspace. Okay, up is Class D airspace. Okay, Class D airspace, like I said before, is one of those airspaces that surrounds an airport. It's a Class D airport, obviously, because of the airspace. And it's very simple. Okay, all Class D airspace is pretty much, it's in the shape of a can over an airport. Okay, just like a pop can. Okay, so here's how it generally works. Okay, now not all Class D airports are like this. This is not set in stone, but generally speaking, from the center of the airport all the way out to the edge of the airspace, you have about 4.4 nautical miles. Okay, like I said, it's not set in stone, but that's generally how it is. Okay, so that's how far out it goes. Okay, and it's obviously depicted by this blue dotted line. Okay, and we can tell how high it goes by what's in this blue box here. Okay, and it says 3.5. So what's that mean? Well, we multiply that by 100 basically. It's it's just basically saying it's 3,500 feet above the ground. I'm sorry, above mean sea level. Okay, so the airspace starts at the surface and goes all the way up to 3,500 feet mean sea level and goes out 4.4 nautical miles. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll take a look at another airspace, another Class D airspace. Over here, Selfridge. Okay, and you notice Selfridge Airspace over here, it's got 4.4 nautical miles, and I'll have to apologize for my poor drawing. Okay, but over here you notice it goes out a lot further than 4.4 nautical miles, and you got these little indentation here. Okay, all right, and that's because sometimes they'll actually adjust the airspace to take the shape of how the traffic generally flows. Okay, a lot of times a lot of traffic here flows out here over the lake. It'll come out here like this for its traffic pattern. So they'll oftentimes adjust the airspace to the shape of the airport. Okay, and just kind of for practice, as you can see here, the airspace extends to 3,100 feet above mean sea level, and of course, as all Class D airspaces do, start at the surface. Okay. The last kind of Class D airspace I want to familiarize you with is a depiction that you might see on your chart is this right here, over here at Willow Run, is something that looks like this. Okay, you see the 30 in there, but in front of that you see a minus sign, a negative sign. So what is that? Negative 30, negative 3,000 feet. What is that? No, what that's basically saying is that it goes up to, but not including, 3,000 feet. Okay, sometimes they'll do that for the shelf of a Class Bravo airspace, in this instance above it, but really that's just saying the airspace goes up to, but not including, 3,000 feet. Finally, the last thing you might want to know about the Class D airspace is the fact that in order to get in there, the only thing you need is two-way radio communication. So you want to go into any Class D airspace, two-way radio communication is all you need. Okay. Next up, let's hit up Class C airspace. Okay. Class C airspace is a little more complicated, but still not too bad. Okay. It's pretty straightforward. We got two shelves. Okay, with Class C airspace. Got from the center out to 5 nautical miles, and then from the center out to 10 nautical miles. Okay, and obviously it's depicted by that purple solid line. Okay, and we can tell how high each of these shelves go by this little fraction looking thing that they give us here and here. Okay, once again I apologize. So basically what this is saying is it goes from the surface up to 4,800 feet, and then this shelf here goes from 2,100 feet to 4,800 feet. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. So that's pretty much how you can tell how high it goes. So if we were over here, let's say we were over this little, well, let's say we're out by this airport here, okay? Essentially, if we're at 2,000 feet over this airport, you are not in the Class C airspace, okay? Let's say you're at 3,000 feet over that airport, then you are in the Class C airspace. If you're in here, anywhere between the surface to 4,800 feet MSL, you're in the airspace, okay? The last thing I really want to show you with the Class C airspace is actually over here in Chicago, okay? You might notice something like this here. It says 19, it says T over 19 or T over surface, okay? All that's really saying is that the airspace starts from at 1,900 feet and goes up to the floor of the overlying Class Bravo airspace, okay? Same thing here, goes from the surface to the overlying Class Bravo airspace, okay? If you didn't know what that meant, take a look right here. It says ceiling is up to but not including the floor of the Class Bravo, and it says that right there. And so that is the Class C airspace. To get into Class C airspace, all you really need is two-way radio communication with approach control, okay? And you can contact approach anywhere between 30 to 20 miles out, mainly 30, and you need a transponder. And that's all you really need to get into the Class Charlie airspace. Okay, the next kind of airspace we're going to go over here is Class Bravo airspace, okay? Right now I'm down here at Cleveland Airport to kind of help us out with that. So here we are at the Class Bravo airport, okay? Class Bravo works a lot. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It really actually works a lot the same way that Charlie does, except it's like a super upside down wedding cake. So yeah. Simply, as you can see, it's just got a bunch of shelves here. And they're just a bunch of circles. There's really no rhyme or reason to this. They'll generally outfit the shelves in accordance to the surrounding area. So if you look here, you'll see 80 over surface, so it goes from the surface up to 8,000 feet MSL. On this shelf here, it goes from 1,900 feet to 8,000 feet MSL. This shelf here, it goes from 3,000 feet to 8,000 feet MSL. You know, pretty straightforward, pretty basic. So that's pretty much just how that works. So you could be under here at 2,000 feet and still be out of the Class Bravo airspace. But let's say you were coming here 2,000 feet. As soon as you cross this line here, okay, then you're going to be in the Class Bravo by 100 feet because the Class Bravo started at 1,900. Okay. To get into the Class Bravo airspace, here's what you need. 1, you need two-way radio communication. 2, you need a Mode C transponder, and come to that, you're going to see this purple line here that goes all along the airport, and that's 30 nautical miles out. So any operations that you do inside this 30 nautical mile radius of the Class Bravo airport, whether you're talking to anybody or not, you must have a Mode C transponder. Okay, so you gotta have a Mode C transponder to operate even within just that 30 nautical mile radius. And finally, you need a clearance to get in there. They need to specifically tell you you are cleared into the Class Bravo airspace. Okay, and so that is what you need for Class Bravo airport. Okay, so the next one that we are going to cover here is the Class E airspace. Okay, Class E airspace is not exactly as straight cut forward as you would think it to be. Okay, Class E airspace. Well, we're going to start with the default Class E airspace, as they call it. Okay. Above 14,500 feet, no matter where you are in the continental United States at least, Class E airspace will always start at 14,500 feet MSL. Okay. All right, and we can see that by being outside of this blue shading area. Okay, you see how the blue shades in into this area over here. The blue shades into here, it shades in this way. Okay, well here it's shading away from there, and so we're on the darker side, if you will, of here. So we can see that the Class E airspace is going to start at 14,500 feet and go all the way up to Class A airspace of 18,000 feet. Okay. But when we see this blue shading here, okay, that pretty much depicts that the Class E airspace is being brought down to 1,200 feet. Okay. So, in essence, if we are traveling at 3,000 feet over here, okay, if we take off of Grand Marais, however you say it, Grand Marais Airport here, we climb out to 3,000 feet, okay, we're going to be in Class G airspace, okay, it's uncontrolled, no one's watching you, okay, if we travel this way at 3,000 feet, we're going to continue in Class G airspace until we hit this part here. As soon as we go into this shading area, okay, we're going to be at 3,000 feet at least. We will for sure be in Class E airspace. Okay, we can talk to center control from there. Okay, and we can go all the way down to 1,200 feet, and we'll still be in Class E airspace. But as soon as we descend below 1,200 feet, and that's AGL now. That's 1,200 feet above the ground. You have now entered back into Class G airspace. So basically, inside the blue shading, Class E starts at 1,200. Okay, we'll then continue on and enter into, let's say we turn in here, going to this Victor Airway here, and we go into this magenta shading. Okay, now that Class E airspace has been brought down to 700 feet. Okay, so now the Class E is down to 700 feet. So if we're out here at 3,000 feet, we're going to continue right along in the Class E airspace, and we're just going to continue to go along the Class E airspace. But let's say we came down to, we'll say 800 feet above the ground here, and just kind of continued along in the Class G, okay, because remember, Class E goes up to 1,200 here, okay, or starts at 1,200 here, and we're at 800. We're then going to go into here. You will see that will then, of course, be inside Class E again, because like I said, in the magenta shading, that is Class E airspace starting at 700 feet. Okay. Below that 700 feet, it's Class G again. Okay. Then finally, the last thing you're going to want to see, that you will see often with the Class E airspace, is this purple dotted line here. Okay, what the heck does that purple dotted line mean? Well, all that means is that the Class E is brought right down to the surface. Okay, so let's say we were going on a trip from out here somewhere, and we were just going to go straight into here. Okay, and the whole way we're going to take off. Okay, we're going to climb out. Okay, we're at 3,000 feet. Okay. And we wanted to stay just at the floor of the Class Echo airspace. Okay, what are we going to do? Well, if we want to stay at the floor out here, we're going to have to go all the way up to 14,500 feet. Okay, then we hit here. We want to still stay at the floor, so what do? We're going to have to descend down to 1,200 feet. Okay, because now we're inside that blue shading. Okay, we continue along at 1,200 feet until we hit here. Okay, once we hit this magenta shading, we still want to stay at the floor of it, so we're going to descend down to what altitude? 1,200 feet. Okay, we continue 1,200 feet until we hit, right here. Well, now the only way to stay at the floor of the Class Echo is to go all the way down to the ground. So the purple dotted line shows the floor of the Class E at the surface. The magenta shaded shows the floor at 700 feet above the ground, 700 feet AGL now. And the blue shading shows it at 1,200 feet AGL. and that is Class E and G airspace.